So I had a kid come in the shop, looking at something I was doing, had an interesting question. How exactly do you make sure when you're turning a piece of metal that you are in the exact center of that piece of metal? Well, let me show you. Okay, got my piece of steel in. I'm gonna center it real quick so that I can drill a center in the end of it. So as you can see, I've got the indicator touching the rod, and the dial is on 0 right here. Each one of those hash marks is 1/1000th of an inch. So as the dial moves, it's moving, if I go to right there, that's about 10/1000ths of an inch. So we need to make sure that the piece of metal is running true and it's not sitting there, doing this where it's wobbling. So we're centering it here. This is a 4-jaw chuck. So what I do is I get a control point. I find my first jaw. I line it up with the indicator, set the indicator to 0, and then I rotate the chuck 180 degrees. And I look at the difference. Well, I've already adjusted this one, but you can see I'm still on 0. If I was off, say 5/1000ths, 10/1000ths of an inch, I would adjust it by half of the distance that I'm missing. So if I'm off by 10/1000ths, I'm going to adjust it 5/1000ths. I'm going to reset my dial to 0, and then I'm going to rotate it another 180 degrees. All right, and then I'm going to look at it again, and I'm going to keep doing that until every time I rotate it 180 degrees, I'm hitting dead on 0. Now once I have this jaw and this jaw, so the jaw over here and the jaw right here, as long as they are both hitting 0, the next thing I'm going to do is take and rotate 90 degrees. So I'm going to rotate this jaw down in line, and I'm going to look at the dial indicator. Again, I've already zeroed this, so I know I'm right. But if this was off 5/1000ths of an inch, when I rotate 90 degrees, I'm going to move the dial back to 0. So I'm going to adjust it till it runs back to 0. So at that point, theoretically, I have 3 jaws. I have the lower jaw, this upper jaw, and this jaw now zeroed, theoretically. So if I rotate 180 degrees at this point, I come around 180, I should be really close to 0 or at 0. You may be off a couple of thousandths, and then you just adjust again until you get 0 on both of your jaws. And then you'll rotate it 90, adjust back to 0 again, and continue this until you can spin the entire chuck all the way around and you get no play in the dial. That's how you zero a piece of work. So what we're doing here, we've zeroed the piece of metal in the 4-jaw. Now I'm going to cut a center in the end of the work here, and I've got a small cutter that it's called a center cutter or center drill, and we're just going to drill a center point here that'll have a bevel on it. And what that does, that bevel will allow for the end of this tool to ride in there, and that will keep this end and this end completely centered, completely parallel to the ways, and keep it from vibrating and fluctuating as I go to make my cuts.